Already back very soon because of the urge to present the next speaker. Richard Szymanski is a seasoned computer science and the brains behind HackerR News, Shiny Empty State, and Future Flag open source packages. In today's session, he will uncover the magic of ShinyTictoc and demonstrate how it streamlines performance measurement, making it effortless to benchmark your apps right in your browser. I guess it's the right time to say goodbye to sluggish dashboards and hello to a smooth user experience. Richard, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction. Hi, everybody. I hope you're enjoying the conference so far. I'm Richard Szymański. I'm a staff engineer at Appsilon. Today I'll be talking about ShinyTictoc, a new tool for measuring the performance of Shiny applications. But before that, I want you to meet John, Jane, and Alex. All three of them are Shiny 4R developers who are currently working on a Shiny application that's been a bit slow lately. And all of them need to investigate what bottleneck might be causing those performance issues and make that dashboard fast. Let's have a look at John. John decided to use Shiny load test as an initial way to benchmark the performance of his app. However, to use Shiny load test, you need to install ShinyCanon. And to use ShinyCanon, you need to have Java available on your development environment. Unfortunately, John works in a restricted environment where he doesn't have admin privileges and is not able to install additional software. He could submit a request to the IT team. However, from his experience, it usually takes a couple of weeks to get something installed there. So John, unfortunately, is stuck for a couple of weeks. Let's move on to Jane. Jane decided to use Provis to profile the slow dashboard and try to find the bottleneck and the exact R function that might be causing the slowness of it. And this is part of the flame graph she got as a result. Jane finds the flame graph difficult to read and sees references to functions she doesn't recall being called in the dashboard. Let's head on over to Alex. Alex was able to run both Provis and Shiny load test on the dashboard and even managed to get results that were easy to analyze. Unfortunately, the mystery still wasn't solved. There was no signs of bottlenecks happening over there. And the reason for that is the bottleneck was happening in the JavaScript code run in the browser. And those two tools don't give you visibility into those computations. So what I'm sort of trying to say here is that investigating performance issues in Shiny can be incredibly difficult and frustrating. And all of those three situations we saw here happened to me multiple times in the past. And as I was seeing my colleagues facing similar situations, I started thinking, could there be an easier way to investigate performance issues in Shiny? And as I was thinking about it, I reminded myself of the JavaScript events in Shiny article back from 2015. Specifically, the table at the end of this article that lists all of the available JavaScript events in Shiny. So what the JavaScript event is a mechanism in the browser that informs you about something happening. So there were 4 particular events that drew my attention. For example, the Shiny busy event, which informs you about some computations happening on the server side in Shiny. The Shiny idle event, which informs you that there is no computation happening on the server side in Shiny. And there are also output-related events, like Shiny recalculating, which informs you that a given output is being recalculated, and the Shiny value event, which informs you that an output has received the recalculated value from the server. And I thought to myself, what if we just measured the time between those events? And this is the core idea behind ShinyTictoc. So let's have a look how it works live. So here I have the feature forests up with ShinyTictoc set up. So now all we have to do is interact with the application. So let's change the trees a couple of times. And let's visualize a couple of different scenarios. Let's have a look at the About page. Let's switch the language of the application, and let's look at some additional statistics. And now we can open the browser DevTools and run the export HTML report function, which will result in downloading an HTML file containing a timeline visualization, which visualizes our measurements. Each measurement is marked by an ID, like server computation, which means that it's a computation happening on the server side. Or if it's an output-related measurement, then it's marked by the output ID. It also measures the time it takes to run custom message handlers. Let's have a look at the startup of this app. So some server computation is taking over a second. Some outputs also take over a second to render. The custom message handler in this case is quite fast, as it just takes 15 milliseconds. Of course, all of those measurements are also available for you, and you can export them in a CSV file using the export measurements function, which will contain all of the information that's used for that timeline visualization you just saw. So the idea of the measurement, the type of it, its start time, and its duration. So you can have a closer look and analyze it in different ways. So that's how you use ShinyTictoc, but how do you set it up? So to start using ShinyTictoc, all you need to do is include this code chunk anywhere in the UI of your Shiny application. So ShinyTictoc is actually a JavaScript file which sets up all of the measurements for you. You don't need to install any R package or install any system dependencies. You just include that JavaScript file in your app and you can get started. When it comes to the usage, apart from the functions we saw in the demonstration, we also have the show all measurements function, which prints out all of the measurements ShinyTictoc made in your app. The export measurements function, which we just saw, which exports a CSV file with all of the measurements. The show summarized measurements, which will show you the slowest server computation and the slowest output in your app. And this can be useful if your app evolves over time. And for example, you change some output IDs or get rid of some outputs. And that way you can sort of compare them, what was the slowest computation over time. And the export HTML report, which we also saw, which exports an HTML file containing a timeline visualization. All right, so we have that ShinyTictoc, but there are also other tools for investigating performance issues in Shiny, like Probvis or Shiny Load Test or Shiny Benchmark. Like, is ShinyTictoc meant to replace them, or can you combine it with other tools? Those are all very good questions to ask. And what I would say is try ShinyTictoc for the easy setup and usage, because all you need to do is include a JavaScript script and you can get started. No need to install any additional packages or system dependencies. For actionable numbers, because you get the numbers your users actually experience. And you know how much time a user has to wait for a given output to appear. And for a full performance picture, because ShinyTictoc includes both server-side computations and browser-side computations, so you can know exactly where to look for your performance bottleneck. And if you don't believe me, here are some quotes from some of the first users of ShinyTictoc. And here's what they had to say. That was super easy. I didn't have to install anything. Fantastic in terms of ease of use, very easy to get started. It was very easy and very fast. It's so easy, we must use that. I would use it right away. And if you don't believe them, let's have a look at some numbers. So what we did at Appsilon is we invited people who had no prior experience with shiny.tictoc. We shared with them the GitHub README of shiny.tictoc and asked them to benchmark the apps they're currently working on, and we would time them on that. And what I mean by that is the moment they would open up that README, we would start the timer, and the moment they would open the exported HTML file with the timeline visualization, we would stop the timer. And I'm happy to share that all of the participants were able to benchmark their apps in less than 5 minutes. So shiny.tictoc is just another tool in our Shiny Performance Diagnostics toolbox. It's not meant to replace any of the existing tooling. It's meant to fill in some existing gaps and provide an additional perspective. I would even encourage you to try combining shiny.tictoc with other tools. Like, for example, I could imagine starting out with shiny.tictoc to get an initial sense of the performance of your application, where the bottlenecks might be. And if you notice that there are a lot of server computations happening in your app, then maybe try using Provis to learn what R functions might actually be contributing to that slowness. Or if you notice that there's a lot of time spent directly in the browser, maybe you'd want to look into browser DevTools and the performance tooling there to have a look at what JavaScript code is causing the slowness. And if it's important to you to know how your app will behave with multiple users, Shiny Load Test is still your best bet. So as mentioned, shiny.tictoc is just another tool in the toolbox, and I encourage you to combine it with other tooling. And how about Shiny for Python? So some time ago, I was screaming through the Shiny for Python documentation, specifically the framework comparisons section and the entry on Shiny for R. And there was one sentence that drew my attention, and it's all of the main components of Shiny, like reactivity, rendering functions, and modules are the same. And both packages use the same JavaScript code. And both packages use the same JavaScript code. And this got me thinking. shiny.tictoc is based on JavaScript events in Shiny for R. Shiny for Python uses the same JavaScript code as Shiny for R. Does that mean that shiny.tictoc works in Shiny for Python? Let's find out. So here I have the respiratory disease app written in Shiny for Python with shiny.tictoc setup. So let's interact with it. Let's change the year of the data that's visualized here. Let's move on to the graphs tab. Let's pick a wide time range. Let's switch the data source. Let's add in some additional countries and even more countries. Let's go crazy here. And let's switch back the data source again. Let's switch back to the map tab, and we can open the browser DevTools and run the same JavaScript functions we used for Shiny for R. And as we can see, we got our timeline visualization, and we see server computation measurements, some output measurements, as well as some custom message handlers used in this app. And of course, all other functions work as well. So you can export the CSV file containing all of the measurements. And how does the setup look like in Shiny for Python? So it's super similar to the setup in Shiny for R. Just include a script tag pointing to the shiny.tictoc JavaScript file anywhere in your UI definition, and you can get started. All right, so check out shiny.tictoc on GitHub. Here's my contact info, my email, and you can also find me on LinkedIn. And thank you. I hope you'll find shiny.tictoc useful, and happy to answer any of your questions, either here or on the Shiny for All Slack workspace.
Thank you, Richard. I think people will need to take time to recover from the mind being blown away and then ask the questions. The presentation, got them thinking definitely on the impression of the shiny.tictoc. From From Bernardo Lares, there is a question. Can we source that JS file instead of calling a URL? For security reasons, some companies don't allow these calls to external sources.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so here what you can do is the JavaScript file is available on GitHub. So you can download it and use it as a static asset in your app. So it's like hosted internally in your company. So those security policies don't block it.
Mm-hmm. And another one then from Will Hipson. Could you also use ShinyTictoc to evaluate performance in deployed apps? To clarify, deployed as in users are interacting with it and you want to evaluate the performance without needing to interact with it yourself.
Yes, so if you deploy your app with ShinyTictoc included in your UI, then it's available in their browser, so they can interact with the app, run the same JavaScript functions, and share the reports with you. And this is actually an additional motivation behind ShinyTictoc, because like one of the most challenging things I encountered when dealing with performance issues is when you get different numbers than your users.
Okay, I guess that answers the question then. Also, the one that I had in mind regarding the actually challenges or some unexpected insights that you had with ShinyTictoc while working with it. So you just shared one. Maybe there's something else that you can think of that would be worth sharing.
I would say maybe one other insight is it can really surprise you what can slow down your app. Like you can find things you would never expect. Like I remember one case where this goes back to the third example where the bottleneck was happening on the browser side, and I was using Plotly. And there was this issue that this feature where you could click on the map and the marker would appear. And for some reason, it was super slow and it was super unintuitive because you're just adding one marker. But when digging deeper, it turned out that the whole map was being re-rendered just for adding that single marker. So that was I think another interesting case where ShinyTictoc turned out useful.
It is indeed. Okay, cool. While we were talking, I got another question from King Jun Won. Can you tell example usage scenario of ShinyTictoc?
I would say whenever you encounter a performance issue, just include it in your app and look at the timeline visualization. And that way, you can learn where is your app spending the most of its time. Of course, possibilities are endless. For example, if you're looking for some continuous benchmarking in some way, you can combine it, for example, with Shiny benchmark, where you can define a scenario written in Shiny test 2 and run that scenario in your continuous integration pipeline and export the measurements in that way, compare them over time.
Thank you. I think I had another one here. Yes, from Charles Bordet. Can we embed TikTok videos in Shiny app with ShinyTictoc?
There's no blocking of TikTok and ShinyTictoc, so I would say
Go for it.
Should be a yes, but let me know what your results are.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Richard. We are out of time and it's time for us to give floor to other speakers. Thank you so much for your presentation. Thank you, the audience, for the questions. And let's get ready to get more insights from our next speakers.